All right, very good.
I can do the Manglacharya. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjanashalakaya
Shalakaya
Prakshilitam Yena Tasmai Shri
Tasmai
Guruve
Shri Guruve
Namaha
Namaha.
Shri Chaitanya
Anya
Manobhishtam
Mano
Sthapitam Yena
Stapitam
Bhutale
Yena
Swayam
Bhutale
Kadamayam
Maya
Dadati
Dati
Swadanti
Swapadantikam
Deham Shri Guru Shri Yuta
Kamalam
Padakamalam Shri Gurum
Shri Guru
Vaishnavamscha
Vaishnavamsta
Shri Rupam
Krishna
Sagrajatam Sahagana
Sahagana
Sadana
Raghunatam Tam
Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam
Sajivam
Sadvaitam
Advaitam
Savadutam
Savadutam
Harijana
Harijana
Sahitam
Sayitam
Krishna
Shri
Chaitanya Devam
Chaitanya Devam
Shri Radha
Shri
Krishna
Radha Krishna Padam
Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri
Tasi
Vishakha
Vishakam
Vitamsva
Pitam Cha
Shri Krishna
He Krishna
Karuna
Karuna
Sindhu
Sindhu Dina
Dinabandhu
Bandhu
Jagat
Jagatpate
Devi Gopesha
Gopesha
Gopika
Gopika
Kanta
Kanta
Radha
Radha Kanta
Kanta
Namaste
Tapta Kanchana
Kanchana
Gauraki
Gaurange
Radhe
Radhe
Vrindavaneshwari
Vrindavaneshwari
Shapanu Sute
Rishabhanu
Devi
Sutadevi Prananami Hari Priye Shakalpa
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha
Turubhyascha
Kripa
Kripa
Sindhu
Sindhu
Vacha
Vacha
Pitanam Pavanebhyo
Vanebhyo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo
Vaishnavebhyo Namo
Shri Krishna Chaitanya
Chaitanya
Prabhu
Prabhu
Nityananda Shri Advaita
Advaita
Gadadhara
Gadadha
Srivasadi
Srivasadi
Gaura
Gaur
Bhaktavrinda
Bhaktavrinda
Hare Krishna
Hare
Hare
Krishna
Krishna
Hare Krishna
Krishna Krishna
Krishna
Hare
Krishna
Hare
Hare Hare
Hare
Hare
Rama
Rama
Hare
Hare
Rama
Rama
Rama Rama
Rama
Hare
Rama Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Danvat Pranam. Please accept our humble obeisances on behalf of everybody who have joined and are about to join or will see the recording later on. Prabhuji, we are reading the Srimad Bhagavatam. We are on Canto 2, Chapter 10. Chapter 10 is Bhagavatam, is the answers to all questions. And the text for today is text 8, Prabhuji. So I hand over to you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Jai Hare Krishna. So continuing with our study of Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 2, Chapter 10. Today's text is number 8. Yodyatmiko yam, Yodyatmiko yam purusha, sosa beva didaivika, yastatrovaya vichedaha, purushari bhautikaha. Yeah, one who, adhyatmikaha, is possessed of the sense organs. I am this. Purusha, personality. Sa, he. Asal, that. Eva, also. Adidaivikaha, controlling deity. Ya, that which. Tatra, there. Ubaya, of both. Vichedaha, separation. Purusha, person. He, for. Adi Bodhika, the visible body or the embodied living being. Translation by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adhyatmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adidivik. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibodhic person. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we could take turns reading the purport. I'll start. Purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The supreme controlling summum bonum is the personality of Godhead and his plenary portion of Paramatma, or the supersoul manifestation. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said, Atava bahunaitena kim gyatena tavarjuna vistabhyaham idam kritsnam ekam shenastito jagat. All the controlling deities like Vishnu, Brahma, and Shiva are different manifestations of the Paramatma feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, who exhibits himself in such manners by entering into each and every universe generated from him. But still, apparently, there are divisions of the controller and controlled. For example, in the food controlling department, the controller of food is a person made of the same ingredients as the person who is controlled. Similarly, each and every individual in the material world is controlled by the higher demigods. For example, we have our senses, but the senses are controlled by superior controlling deities. We cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of light is the sun. The sun god is in the sun planet, and we, the individual human beings, or any other being on this earth, are all controlled by the sun god as far as our eyes are concerned. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by the superior demigods, who are also as much living entities as we are, but one is empowered while the other is controlled. The controlled living entity is called the Adi-Atmic person, and the controller is called the Adi-Daivic person. So someone can read the rest of the purport, please.
All these positions in the material world are due to different fruitative activities. Any individual living being can become the sun god or even Brahma or any other god in the upper planetary system by the higher grades of pious work. And similarly, one becomes controlled by the higher demigods by lower grades of fruitative activities. So every individual living entity is subject to the supreme control of the Paramatma, who puts everyone in different positions of the controller and the controlled. That which distinguishes the controller and the controlled, that is, the material body, is called Adibhautik Purusha. The body is sometimes called Purusha, as confirmed in the Vedas in the following hymn: Sava Esha Purusho Jnana Sama Ya. This body is called the Anarasa embodiment. This body depends on food. The living entity which is embodied does not eat anything. However, because the owner is spirit in essence, the material body requires replacement of matter for the wearing and tearing of the mechanical body. Therefore, the distinction between individual living entity and controlling planetary deities is in the Rasamaya body. The sun may have a gigantic body and the man may have a smaller body, but all these visible bodies are made up of matter. Nonetheless, the sun god and the individual person who are related as a controller and the controlled are the same spiritual parts and parcels of the Supreme Being. And it is the Supreme Being who places different parts and parcels in different positions. And thus the conclusion is that the Supreme Person is the shelter for all. Hare Krishna. Over to you, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Thank you. So the text again today. The individual person possessing different instruments of senses is called the Adi-Atmic person, and the individual controlling deity of the senses is called Adi-Daivic. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adi-Bodhic person. So this chapter is entitled Bhagavatam is the answer to all questions. And Shukadeva Goswami is continuing to answer Maharaj Parikat's questions. He had asked several questions at the end of the first canto about Krishna and Krishna's connection to this world, who we are, who Krishna is, what this world is. So Shukadeva Goswami is continuing to explain that, answer these questions of Maharaj Parikat. And here, detailed details of this cosmic manifestation that there is of course, us, uh, the spirit souls who are embodied, different bodies, human bodies, animal bodies, and demigods, higher controlling personalities, just as in this world, there's government. There are the citizens, and then there is, in every country, there is a government controlling. And the government has different departments, isn't it? Department of Defense, of Health, of Education, different departments. So it's reasonable. Perhaps we can say that. It's not completely crazy that this universe also has a governing administration, which we may not be familiar with, uh, but uh, it is a reasonable idea. And here, Srimad Bhagavatam is explaining, yes, uh, that as Srila Prabhupada concludes the purport, the conclusion is the Supreme Person is the shelter of all. And at the beginning of the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains to us that although there are demigods, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu, and others, Ganesh, and Surya, Narayan, many demigods. They're all manifestations of the Paramatma feature of Krishna. So as we know, not everyone knows this. Not everyone is familiar with this understanding. Um, it's interesting how there are many, many millions of people, mostly in India, but all over the world, uh, who have some information. The Hinduism, it's called Hinduism. So many followers of Hinduism, and uh, India is known as a place where people believe in many gods, the worship of many gods, and many persons of Indian ethnicity, uh, either living in India, first, second, third generation, living in other countries. There is awareness, there's consciousness of these different ideas and understandings of Lord Shiva and Lakshmi. We're just uh, every November is the Diwali, and especially devoted to Mother Lakshmi, Lakshmi Mata. And it's interesting that, how is it that there is, we may say, a correct understanding of things. And then there are many other conceptions which are not quite correct. There is a game uh, children sometimes play, sometimes adults. At least I know it by the name post office. So someone tells some very short narrative, some very short story, something. And to one person in the group, and then to the next person, it's repeated, and the next person, it's repeated. And then it's fun to see how close to the original the final person tells the story. So This is natural. It happens. Uh, so within the Vedic scriptures, we understand that there's no word Shiva. There would not be any word Shiva or Ganesh or Brahman or yoga without the Vedic scriptures. There would not be such words. And even more, we understand that, of course, without the author, without the one who gave the Vedic scriptures, there would be no such words to bandy about. Uh, there's often debate, as we know, arguments. Is Shiva greater? Ganesh greater? Krishna greater? Vishnu greater? Is it first Lord Vishnu and then Lord Krishna, or is it first Lord Krishna and then Lord Vishnu? And sometimes there are very intense arguments, uh, even fighting amongst people about this. Uh, for a number of reasons. If we think about it, if we step back and we think about it, it's only natural. Uh, all of us, we grow up in a certain family, in a certain neighborhood. We have our uncles and aunties and grandparents. We live in a particular town or village or city. And the people around us, we learn. We learn from the people around us, don't we? And so some of us may be born into, there's no devotion to anyone. It's a materialistic family. And then many of us grow up in religious families. Someone grows up in a Christian family. Someone grows up in a Jewish family. Someone grows up in a Hindu family that's devoted to Lord Shiva for many generations. And our mother may be devoted to Lord Shiva, and her mother and father and great grandparents. And it's a very long, deep culture of devotion to Lord Shiva or Ganesh or Lakshmi. And that's what we learn, of course. And it's the nature of us humans, it's the nature of the soul, as Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna, that when we have a close relationship, a loving relationship with someone, uh, they have a strong influence upon us. We love. Usually, we love, we respect our parents, our grandparents, our uncles, our grandparents, our teachers. We don't often think, at least as children, or even young adults, we don't think that uh, maybe they're wrong. Maybe they're mistaken. We just assume that whatever they're telling us, that's the right thing, it's the correct thing. And so when we meet someone who has a different view than our family, different beliefs, then we get into arguments sometimes. No, 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 you should be a devotee of Lord Vishnu. No, you should be a devotee of Venkateshwar. No, you should be a devotee of Lord Ram. You should worship Jesus. You should, and we get in arguments sometimes, or we think less of other people. We tend to think as humans that whatever we're thinking, that's the right thing. So that is the common, that is the, you may say, the natural human way. Uh, and there's a lot to do with human emotions too. Because if someone tells us something different than what our grandfather told us, then we're put into conflict. Oh, maybe he was wrong. How could he be wrong? How could my mother be wrong? I don't want to think that about my mother, so I'm not going to think about it because it doesn't feel good. It may be true, but I don't want to think about it because it doesn't feel good emotionally. So we all know that we humans, our feelings, our emotions they have a lot to do with what we do and what we don't do, don't they? You know. And then there's so many emotions. You know, we have pride. You know, you can imagine someone 32, 35 to 40 years old, and then they start hearing about how Krishna is the supreme source of everything, the shelter of, and they've been devoted to Lord Shiva all their life, and they've been thinking how Lord Shiva is the greatest. And that's a very hard thing to change your mind about that, just because of it's just what you've gotten used to thinking. And then number two, you have your pride that, well, I don't want to, I wouldn't feel very good if I was not quite correct all these years. So I don't want to, so many things. You know, what will my parents think if I accept this? What will my neighbors think? It it is unfortunate, actually, to some extent. It can be. The degree to which we are controlled by other people's thinking, other people's opinions. What will they think? What will my mother think? What will my neighbor think? What will my friends think? And it's understandable. You know, we don't want to lose friends for any reason. You know. But you know, I think we can all agree that beyond our feelings and beyond all of that, there are facts. There are facts. And really, if the facts, if the information is such and such, and it's different than what I already know, then I should change my thinking, just in a neutral way, just without considering anything else. The truth is the truth, regardless of our feelings or the opinions of other people. Therefore, we read in books of yoga, and of course in Bhagavad Gita, that there are certain qualities of character that are required to make advancement in absolute truth. We have to develop humility, and we have to develop sense control, self-discipline. We have to develop tolerance and patience. All these qualities are required in order to be a devotee and to reawaken our devotion. We may have to tolerate that we don't agree with our friends anymore or as much, or we don't agree with our family as much as we did before. And just that's not always easy. And so it puts us in a challenging position, or it's a challenging situation. So we have to just tolerate. We have to develop the inner strength, the mental strength to make the right choices and move in the right direction without being influenced by other people's feelings and opinions and even our own uh, habituated feeling. You know, we may have a thinking pattern that we've had for a long time. And although we know it's not perhaps quite correct, it's not always easy to shift. So we have to be patient with ourselves. We have to be tolerant. We have to have inner strength. Without that inner spiritual strength of relationship with Krishna, it can be, we can remain stuck in illusion. So the fact of the matter is, according to the Vedic scriptures, for those who know, for those who are well studied, and there are such people, because the thing is, we were talking in the beginning that so many of us, we have our what do you call it, casual understanding. We have our uh, family understanding, and we have our village understanding of spirituality, which is not necessarily wrong, but it is often not complete. Without studying the Vedic scriptures that we get the words Shiva and Vishnu and yoga from, how can we really know what is the message of the Vedas? Our father has an idea, the Pandit at the local temple has, that's a scary thought. Even Pandits, you know, Pandits at temples, mandirs, many of them, although they are uh, certainly respectable and they're able to teach, their teaching only goes so far. Yes. So the Vedic scriptures in the Padma Purana, it is told that one should learn the Vedas from one of four disciplic successions only. One should not, if one is serious. See, that's the thing. You know, we tend to, we humans, we tend to accept as much as we is useful for us. Well, the Panditji is saying if I meditate on Om, I'll become peaceful. And that's all I want is to become peaceful, be able to do my job better and manage my life a little better. That's all I want. And if I can get that by following Panditji's instructions, then that's I don't I'm not interested to know anything else. So that is natural. But there is so much more. And the Vedic scriptures, they instruct us that the goal of life is not only to go so far that I can be more successful in my business and I can pass my college exams and uh, I can be a good person and peaceful. That's the Vedic scriptures say that's not the final and the most desirable uh, success. That the success of life is to break free from the cycle of birth and death, to awaken our realization of Krishna and the spiritual world and go back home, back to Godhead. So not so th this is the goal of Hinduism, really. And not many people know it because most people have a casual understanding. They have just a partial understanding. So the four disciplic successions of pure devotees of Krishna coming down one after the other over time, they carry the pure teaching, the pure, powerful teaching of the Vedic scriptures, which are given by Vyasadeva. So we are very fortunate to be in touch with such a sampradaya, a Brahma, Madhva, Gaudiya sampradaya, so we can get, not only can we have uh, better life now, but the highest of the highest perfection of going back to the spiritual world of awakening love for Krishna. So here, uh, there is discussion in this purport. Shukadev Goswami is explaining about this universe, and yes, there is Brahma and there is Shiva, and there are many different demigods. They are there. They are in charge of different departments of managing the universe or universes, because there are many universes. And Srila Prabhupada says, we cannot see without light, and the supreme controller of light is the sun. Similarly, all the senses we have are controlled by superior demigods. And then specific to this verse, the controlled living entity is called the Adhyatmic person. The controller is the Adidaivic. And generally speaking, this material body of both the demigods and us is called the Adibodhic uh, manifestation. But all these details are not that important, but the important uh, concept is that there are higher beings and we are controlled and above everyone. As Lord Krishna says, Aham Savasya Prabhava Mata Savam Pravartante. There is no one beyond me. Everyone is below me. In the 10th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna explains to Arjuna how everything comes from him. All the demigods come from him, the sages, and then from the demigods and the sages come all the other uh, manifestations of this universe, the planets, different bodies of human beings, all these things, they come from the demigods, and the demigods are spirit souls, just like us, tiny little sparks of Krishna. And all of us are controlled ultimately by Sri Krishna, specifically in his Paramatma manifestation, Supersoul. So this is the vision, the absolute truth. So are there any questions or discussion, comments?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you so much for explaining this. I didn't understand what it means in the translation. The embodiment seen on the eyeballs is called the Adibhautik person. What is this eyeballs on the eyeball?
Yes. Yeah, just like now you're looking at my material body. So that is the what we see with these eyeballs is the Adibodhic manifestation. It may seem a little more complicated than it actually is. As Srila Prabhupada writes later in the purport, all these visible bodies are made of matter, uh, and specifically the kind of body which requires food. Uh, that's the Adibodhic manifestation.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Prabhuji.
Yeah. Any other questions? Otherwise, I'll go on to the next verse, if that's all right. Right. Text 9. Ekam ekatara bhave yada lopa laba mahe. Jitiyam tatra yo veda saatma swashrayashraya. Translation. All three of the above-mentioned stages of different living entities are interdependent. In the absence of one, another is not understood. But the Supreme Being, as the shelter of the shelter, sees every one of them and is independent of all. Therefore, he is the supreme shelter. Very powerful understanding. As Lord Krishna says in that verse 10:8 of Bhagavad Gita, that one who understands that I am the source of everything, material and spiritual, becomes devoted to me. So it's very important to hear again and again how it is that Krishna is above everything and is the source of everything, so that our devotion can grow stronger and stronger. It's very, very hard to be devoted to anyone without some information about them. purport by His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. There are innumerable living entities, one dependent on the other in the relationship of the controlled and the controller. But without the medium of perception, no one can know or understand who is the controlled and who is the controller. For example, the sun controls the power of our vision. We can see the sun because the sun has its body, and the sunlight is useful only because we have eyes. Without our having eyes, the sunlight is useless, and without sunlight, the eyes are useless. Thus, they are interdependent. Neither of them is independent. Therefore, a natural question arises, who made them interdependent? The one who has made such a relationship of interdependence must be ultimately completely independent. As stated in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, the ultimate source of all interdependent objects is the completely independent subject. This ultimate source of all interdependence is the supreme truth or Paramatma, the Supersoul, who is not dependent on anything. He is Swashrayashraya, dependent only on himself, and thus he is the supreme shelter of everything. Still, Paramatma and Brahman are subordinate to Bhagavan because Bhagavan is Purushottama, or the super person, the source of both the Supersoul and Brahman. In the Bhagavad Gita, Lord Krishna says that he is the Purushottama and the source of everything, and thus it is concluded that Sri Krishna is the ultimate source and shelter of all living entities, including the Supersoul and the Supreme Brahman. Even accepting that there is no difference between the Supersoul and the individual soul, the individual soul is dependent on the Supersoul for being liberated from the clutches of the material energy. The individual is under the clutches of the illusory energy, and therefore, although qualitatively one with the Supersoul, he is under the illusion of identifying himself with matter. And to get out of this illusory conception, the individual soul has to depend on the Supersoul to be recognized as one with him. In that sense, also, the Supersoul is the supreme shelter, and there is no doubt about it. So we are devoted, developing, reviving our devotion to Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is being glorified in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And here, all throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, Lord Krishna is verified and explained to be the Supreme Person above all other persons. As Srila Prabhupada begins the Srimad Bhagavatam in the purport, the first verse, that Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Janmadasya Tahan Vyati Tarateshu Vigyasarat Tani Parama Ridyavakavaye Muyati At Suryo Tejo Mirdam Tri Sargo Mishra Damna Swena Sada Nirista Kulka Satyam Padam Dini. So Srila Prabhupada, that verse, it begins with the what they call the thesis statement, the whole purpose of Srimad Bhagavatam, that Lord Krishna is Janmadadi, he is the source of everything, the maintainer of everything. Param Satyam, the supreme truth. And so Srila Prabhupada writes that this is the first verse, and the rest of Srimad Bhagavatam will establish the fact on the basis of the Vedic conclusions that Krishna is the supreme deity. And so therefore we are developing our devotion to Krishna. It's not just family understanding or village understanding, or social understanding, or it may be, but it is not just sentimental, but we have the Vedic evidence by Srila Vyasadeva, the author himself. And there's, of course, no greater authority than the author. Anyone can say anything, but the author of a book is the one who knows for sure what the book is about, isn't it? But still, because it's that's what I was saying, it's almost magical how it is that we have free will, we have independence, and there are people who will argue, no, I know better than Vyasa. It's just it's silly, kind of silly, But, even if you mention, oh well, did you know that you know Srila Vyasadeva, he's the author, and these are his conclusions. No, no, no. This I don't accept. It doesn't click somehow. They don't have respect. So therefore, it requires a certain character to accept truth. It accepts a certain. We need a certain ability. Of course we do. Even someone is drunk, someone who drinks a lot of liquor and they're driving on the road. Someone may say, "Oh, your car, it's on the wrong side." No, no, I'm driving okay. They 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 mechanically, their brain is just not able to comprehend. Oh, I'm driving on the wrong side of the road, or so many things, isn't it? You should stop doing this. It's not healthy. No, it's not. It's okay. I can do it. They'll, they'll argue. Oh, smoking is okay. It's scary. It's scary, our human mind, what it can latch onto, which is not actually correct. We were talking about emotion, people being what they said, how it's called because of ego, because of pride. They won't acknowledge that they made a mistake, between husband and wife or between friends or between children and parents. The person won't back down, right? They won't say, well, I guess you're right. I made a mistake. They won't do that. And they will let the relationship suffer, right? They would rather have a broken relationship or a greatly disturbed relationship than just uh, agree with the other person. I have to be right. I'm not going to. It's just emotional stuff. It's just mental stuff. And it's very powerful, whether it's just relationships between husband and wife or friends, or whether it's discussing who is God. We have to have the ability to think straight. We can just put it like that. We have to have the self-control and the character and the wisdom to know when to say, yeah, of course, Srila Vyasadeva is the authority. Of course he is. I mean, I don't know what my grandfather has been saying, but of course we have to accept Srila Vyasadeva. So we need that character. So this explains, because sometimes we ask, well, how come I explain things to my friend at work or I explain things to my whoever, and they don't accept. I talk until I'm blue in the face and they just won't change because they're unable to change. That's why. They're actually mechanically, at least at the moment, very difficult. And so we should know this. There's no fun. There's no question that smoking tobacco is dangerous, but there's people who won't accept and they'll get angry if you tell them, isn't it? They'll get upset. Oh, that man is not the right man for you. You shouldn't be going around. No, I like him. They just won't, they're just caught up. So there's no fault of the truth. It's just the ability of the person to accept it is not there enough due to past uh, sins with respect to Krishna. So therefore, we shouldn't argue too much with people. Well, Krishna is greater than Shiva, or you must be a devotee of Krishna. A little bit, but just be a friend and try and motivate the person to say something good about Krishna, say something good about devotees. Krishna will be happy with them and will help them to understand because that's our process, isn't it? bhakti. God cannot be understood except by bhakti. And that means a tiny little bit or a lot. Uh, so if we want to help someone to change their point of view, we have to, no, we don't have to, but we can uh, find a way that they can do a little seva for Krishna. Yes, that is a very mystical thing. Yeah. Oh, could you give me a drop at the temple? I'd really appreciate it. Oh, okay. So they're doing some seva. Oh, and prasadam. There's our secret mystic astra. Prasadam, you bring them. You forget about all this talk. Let's just have some prasadam. So that is Krishna seva. And uh, Krishna will allow them. Krishna will give them the ability to understand. Oh, I get it. So that is the secret. It's this bhakti, engaging ourselves in devotion to Krishna, and uh, as much as we might, helping others to do some seva. It's no good arguing with your mother or your friend, and then they're just, oh, you Hare Krishnas, you're just. That's not favorable. That doesn't help them. It's just better to be a friend. Oh well, forget all this. Change the subject. And then because they like you, that's also seva. Yeah, this person at work, I don't agree with them, but I like them. They're my friend. So that's good for them. That's seva. So whether it's our parents, our children, teachers, or whoever it is, that is the method. So any discussion or comments, we'll stop here. Even ourselves, we have to render sufficient service so that we can understand. We may not we won't understand something. But if we go on doing seva, that, oh, I understand. Krishna will give us the ability.
Are there any questions or comments from the group?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji. Please accept my humble obeisance. Thank you so much for that beautiful discourse on those two shlokas. I really have no questions, just a comment on how really, when you come to realize it, it's just quite fascinating that we are here in this world chasing like shadows in the world of illusion, thinking that we can get happiness here and there. And Krishna is the only reality, the only light. And we are all inside, everybody, even the other living entities are searching for him, even though we are not even realizing it. And sometimes we have that tough time to realize actually this is the only true thing we should be searching for. And yet here we are chasing shadows for some small glimpse of happiness. But I don't know. Thank you so much for
Thanks.
that.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank
you for sharing.
Oh.
We have to stay close to the pure devotees like His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada and the previous acharyas and those who purely repeat the message of Krishna. So we can stay in the light.
Thank you.
Anything else?
I don't think, Prabhuji, there is any questions anymore. Shall we end the session today then? Dr. Mugo, are you able to end the session for us today?
Okay, it's an honor.
Krishna.
Thank you so much, Professor Kritika Mataji, for this opportunity. And thank you again, Your Grace Dana Sharana Prabhuji, for that really good, wonderful discourse on those two shlokas. So I would like to kindly request all the small devotees to kindly unmute and we do one Mahamantra in glorification of our today's mentor, His Grace Dina Sharana Prabhuji, and all the assembled devotees. Hare Krishna. So Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Hare Krishna,
Krishna
Krishna
Krishna,
Krishna,
Hare Hare,
Hare Rama,
Hare
Hare
Rama,
Rama,
Rama
Rama
Rama,
Rama,
Hare Hare.
Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa
Yaccha,
sindhubheva cha
Hare
patitanam
Vacha,
pavanebhyo
Patitanam,
bhavebhyo namo
Krishna,
namaha.
Namo Namaha.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai, all glories to Sri
Dina Sharan Prabhu ki jai.
Jai, Jai, Jai,
Vanchal Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Jai.
God.
Hare
Thank you so
Krishna.
much for having me in your Sangha. I hope everyone has a safe week and remember Krishna and stay close to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, our lighthouse of spiritual light. Yes?
Thank you,
Thank you very
Prabhuji.
much, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Haribol.
Thank you, everybody, for joining in. Hare Krishna.